As an art lover, I spend most of my time thinking and talking about art. I strongly believe that art plays an important role in developing and shaping our world. Art allows us to create connections across time and space that's impossible in other fields. Art expands our understanding of our world and offers ways to see each other anew. As a curator of contemporary art, I'm very fortunate to be able to work with the art that's being made now. Contemporary art is all about the here and now. It's about the art that is being made at this very moment in time. Now, contemporary art may draw from the past and look to the future, but it does so from the position of today. And because contemporary art draws on the experiences and issues of today, it invites us to have conversations that make us uncomfortable. Now, as a curator, I get to spend a lot of time with artists, and let me tell you, artists are brave. Artists ask questions that most of us haven't even thought of yet. They initiate discussions the rest of us don't even know how to begin. They're brave when most of us are fearful, and they're compassionate when many of us are not. Artists create pathways in which to navigate our world by creating artworks that celebrate, challenge, and inspire. And in doing so, they open up spaces for us to think, spaces for us to reflect, and spaces for us to talk. Now, curating is all about conversations. An exhibition will always begin with a conversation. It may be a discussion with an artist that seeds an idea. It may be an interaction with an artwork that ignites that first spark, the beginnings of a project. And it goes without saying that every great exhibition inspires conversations. Now, for me, it's those uncomfortable conversations, the ones that get under your skin or persist like an annoying earworm that makes its way into your thoughts and doesn't leave. They're the ones that are most transformative. Now, what do I mean when I talk about this idea of uncomfortable conversations with art? Well, for me, an uncomfortable conversation with art is one that makes me think and feel differently. It's a conversation that makes it possible to see the world in a different way. It's a conversation that engages you emotionally and intellectually. As a curator, I'm surrounded by art every day. And it's an interesting thing when you think about it, the way in which art allows us to experience different things, to change the way in which we feel, to think about the world in a completely different way. Today I'm going to talk to you about 3 artworks that have initiated uncomfortable conversations for me. As a curator, I'm surrounded by artists and artworks every day. But even I'm taken aback when an artwork challenges or inspires me in a way I never thought possible, in which I have an engagement that affects me here at the heart and it does something funny up here. So today I'm going to share with you 3 artworks that have had a significant impact on both my work as a curator and me as a human being. So let's start with Remain, a video work by artist Hoda Afshar. Remain is at once stunningly beautiful, utterly compelling, and deeply moving. Hoda makes she makes artworks that deal with the politics of image making and the power of images. Hoda created Remain in 2018 with the refugees who were abandoned on Manus Island, Papua New Guinea. Following the closure of the Australian Immigration Offshore Detention Facility on Manus Island on the 31st of October 2017, over 600 refugees remained on the island. With no place to go and unable to return to the places they fled, the idyllic island turned into a prison for those that remained. Hoda was the only artist to visit Manus Island, and she worked with those refugees to author their own responses to their impossible situation. Time plays a significant role in the video work because in a place where time has stood still, how can you tell one moment from the next? Through the work, we travel across the island with the men as they sing songs and recite poetry from other times, other places. We hear stories about their experiences on the island and from before. Stories that don't feature in newspaper or television reports. And we listen as they recount the tragic deaths of their fellow detainees. Deaths caused by accident, by illness, and by violence. Remain allows us, the audience, to see these men not as refugees, but individuals with hopes and dreams stuck in a perpetual limbo. Hodder highlights the importance of remembering for both the protagonists and for us, the audience. It's important as viewers when we're watching this work to remember that this happened on our watch. When Remain was shown at the Museum of Contemporary Art Australia in 2018, it initiated uncomfortable conversations for audiences. Conversations about the human impact of Australia's immigration policies. Questions about privilege and responsibility, and discussions about what could be done to change a deeply unfair system. Now, not everyone wanted to engage in these conversations, but many, many people did, and they continue to do so. For me, Hodder has created an extraordinary work. It's not an easy work to watch by any means, but when has anything important been easy? Now, the term curator comes from the Latin word cura, meaning to care. And as a curator, I often think about the role of care in relation to exhibition making. An artist who's influenced my thinking about care is Warraba Wetherell. Warraba is an artist from the Kamilaroi Nation, and he considers how knowledge is created and communicated. In particular, Warraba is interested in the way in which First Nations cultural objects and materials are collected and exhibited in museums. Warraba highlights the collecting and research practices used within contemporary institutions that have their origins in Western colonial systems. And he illustrates the influence these practices have on the representation of First Nations peoples and cultures today. To Know and Possess is an installation work that consists of bronze memorial plaques that the artist began in 2021 that will grow over time. Each plaque represents a cultural object in a museum collection in Australia. And it lists a wide range of different objects and materials. A boomerang, a shield, a carved tree, but also human remains. Included on the plaques are information taken from the original museum labels, which date from around 1919 to the mid-1980s. And these include fairly basic information, such as when the work or object was acquired by an institution and who donated it. As you read through the plaques, you realise that there is a lot of information missing, particularly about how this object came to be in a museum collection in the very first instance. Also missing are details about who made it, who did it belong to, when was it taken from community, and how. And it's these questions that remain long after seeing the work. To Know and Possess raises, for us, the audience, questions about how much First Nations cultural material is in collections across Australia. And why are there such gaps in this information? How did these materials come to be in these collections in the first place? To Know and Possess also raises for us important questions about repatriation, that is, the return of cultural objects and ancestral materials to community, and why this is such an important contemporary conversation. For me, To Know and Possess raises integral questions about the role of a curator and the duty of care, both to artists, to artworks, and to community, because what we do today matters tomorrow. Now, storytelling plays a key role in exhibition making, In fact, curating is often called or described as a form of storytelling. In my role as a curator, I work with artists to tell stories through artworks. And one of the conversations that often come up with artists is the cultural and political influence of stories. Language and storytelling also are a key feature of the work of artist Jason Fu. Jason's interested in the relationship between myth and reality in the stories we tell. As Jason describes it, stories are not always truthful and memories aren't always accurate. And this is a very human trait, because who hasn't embellished a particular anecdote at a party for comic effect? Or perhaps edited a story at work to show themselves off in a more flattering light. But what happens when a fabricated story becomes history? Now, Jason's interested in the way in which narratives change over time and how stories are adapted according to changing social values. In 2015, Jason started researching stories around Australian bushrangers, the armed robbers, who were celebrated as outlaw heroes in Australia's national history. Did you know that between 1788 and 1901, there were around 1,300 bushrangers active in Australia? And despite popular representations of bushrangers as being white men, such as the infamous Ned Kelly, bushrangers were both male and female and from diverse cultural backgrounds. In 2018, Jason presented a large-scale installation at the Museum of Contemporary Art Australia, and he titled it The Fifth Reincarnation of Sam Poo, Infamous Bushranger and the Mustard Horde, The Last Stand. And in this work, Jason reimagines the life and death of Australia's only Chinese bushranger, Sam Poo. Now, accurate information about Sam is scant at best. We know that Sam came to Australia as an indentured labourer. We know he was active during the gold rush, and we also know that his English was very limited. In 1865, Sam was hung at Bathurst Jail for shooting and killing a police constable, but contemporary historians doubt whether Sam actually committed this crime. Sam was a marginalised figure in life, and he was an outsider and continues to be an outsider in his death. And although Sam is not a household name like Ned Kelly, he lived through some of the most significant changes of early Australian colonial society. Now, in celebrating an outsider figure like Sam Poo, Jason questions and challenges our basic assumptions about early Australian colonial history. Jason shows us that cultural identities, and particularly national cultural identities, are created and communicated through stories. And the way in which narratives can be embellished and fabricated to wield particular social and political power. For me, Jason's work raises important questions about why we tell particular stories and what they say about us as individuals and as a society, what they reveal about our values and our aspirations. Now, why is art important? Well, we turn to art to help us make sense of the world. We look to art to console and inspire us. And we all have an artwork which we've connected with, that's made us think differently, that's made us feel differently. And a huge part of this is because that artwork has engaged us in an uncomfortable conversation. It's made us step outside our everyday experience. It's challenged who we are and what we believe in. It's questioned the status quo, and it's invited a new way of thinking. And this is why uncomfortable conversations with art is so important. They're important because they invite us to change. Thank you.